هودي مسيحيين تنك.
بدنا القانون، بدنا القانون، بدنا القانون.
بالاخر التنك بتكبين.
الكويت عم تتعرض لحرب كثير كبيره، اساسا حرب بالشام بالضاحيه الجنوبيه، عون وجماعته.
Good afternoon. It is Wednesday, May 22nd. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. Gunfire erupts in Tripoli a day after fierce battles rock the city, killing at least 12 people. Syria's opposition urged fighters across the country to rush to the rescue of rebel stronghold Qusayr. And Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi appeals to the opposition for unity. Sporadic gunfire has erupted in the northern city of Tripoli a day after fierce battles rocked the city, claiming the lives of at least 12 people. This is according to the national news agency, who added that around 130 others were wounded during the weekend clashes. Tens of homes were damaged by the fighting and families fled to safer areas. The army has been deployed in the area since the outbreak, but has failed to halt the fighting in the town, where clashes have frequently broken out since the March 2011 beginning of the conflict in Syria. The Arab Democratic Party pledged later in the day to remain committed to a ceasefire, ordering its supporters to exercise restraint and not to respond to the fire sources. Prime Minister Najib Mikati followed up with security leaders on the recent developments in Tripoli and stressed the Lebanese armed forces have full authority in Tripoli. Future Bloc MP Mohamed Kabbara issued a response to the Arab Democratic Party late on Tuesday night after the latter said that it had entered the battle in Tripoli. Finally, the mask has fallen, and the party of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's Shabiha in Jabal al-Muhsin have applied its threats to shell Tripoli and target its children, women and elderly. The MP said after a meeting he hosted at his residence to address the worsening security situation in Tripoli. Kabbara criticized the country's top political and security officials for their response to the violence engulfing Tripoli. President Michel Sleiman and Lebanese Armed Forces Commander General Jean Ahwajeh know that the Assad party in Jabal Muhsin is the aggressor. The lawmaker inquired, well, will they ever defend Tripoli and its people, or will they keep putting pressure on the victims and be lenient with the killers? The March 14 General Secretariat has urged Prime Minister-designate Tamam Salam to expedite the formation of a new government in order to circumvent the attempts being made by others to use Lebanon as a launchpad to support the embattled Syrian regime. The statement also said that the events in the troubled northern Lebanese city of Tripoli were intrinsically linked to the situation in Syria, and that the northern city residents should be aware that civil strife is the dream of the Syrian regime and its opportunity to justify the ethnic cleansing perpetrated within its borders. Maronite Patriarch Shaddai met with Pope Francis I, with whom he took part in the daily mass held at the Vatican. The Patriarch then held a closed meeting with the Pontiff, during which he requested that he offer his blessing to Lebanon and the Middle East. He hoped that he would also pray for its people and that God would answer the prayers of the Pontiff in the Church and the world. Arai is scheduled to remain in Rome to attend a three-day conference on immigrants and the displaced. He is expected to address the situation in the Middle East and the case of Palestine, Iraq and Syrian refugees in Lebanon. The Patriarch arrived in the Vatican at the end of a tour of South America before returning to Lebanon later this week. Salafist cleric Sheikh Ahmed al-Asir blocked several roads in Saida to stop the burial of a Hezbollah fighter at a cemetery in the southern coastal city. The protesters' move prompted the mourners to bury the fighter at another one. Hezbollah has lately held funerals for members whom officials close to the group say died in the town of Qusayr in Syria's central province of Homs while fighting rebels seeking to topple the regime of Assad. Rami Abdulrahman, who heads the Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, said that the government and Hezbollah bombarded Qusayr with rocket launchers. Syria's opposition is urging fighters across the country to rush to the rescue of rebel stronghold Qusayr, while appealing to the international community to set up a humanitarian corridor to the embattled town. Syria's acting National Coalition opposition chief, George Sabra, issued the call for rebel reinforcements to the town as Syrian troops backed by fighters Hezbollah battled for control of Qusayr. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights watchdog estimates around 25,000 civilians are trapped inside Qusayr, with thousands more still in villages around the town in central Homs province bordering Lebanon. The Syrian army, backed by Hezbollah fighters, launched a long-expected assault against Qusair on Sunday, reportedly entering the town and seizing several municipal buildings. The fighting has since left more than 100 people dead, the observatory said, most of them fighters and Hezbollah members. British Foreign Secretary William Hague said Iran and its militant Shia Lebanese ally Hezbollah were propping up Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and giving him increasing support. Speaking before a meeting of the Friends of Syria alliance in the Jordanian capital, Hague said decisions on whether to increase assistance to the Syrian opposition would depend on what happens in the next few days.
The UK and France have a clear and united position on this. We do want to amend the arms embargo on the opposition, on the national coalition, in order to be able to provide, to have the legal right to provide in the future, should we decide to do so, increased assistance. Decisions about that would depend on what happens in the coming days, and of course, if we were to decide that, we would need to be clear that we were doing so with other nations and in very carefully controlled circumstances, in compliance with international law.
Coming up next, here's a lighter story for you. Microsoft releases the Xbox One game console, and we'll tell you all about it after the break. Welcome back. Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi appealed to the opposition for unity in the face of criticism he is failing the revolution that brought him to power almost a year ago. The Islamist president was speaking after a ceremony to mark the release of 7 security personnel kidnapped last week in the lawless Sinai Peninsula. Morsi, who hails from the powerful Muslim Brotherhood, is Egypt's first elected president since the 2011 uprising that toppled his predecessor, Hosni Mubarak, himself in power for 30 years. But his opponents accuse him of placing the interests of his Islamist movement above those of the nation, despite repeated vows to be a president for all Egyptians. Earlier this month, a campaign calling for his ouster gathered over 2 million signatures, its organizers said, including from high-profile activists and celebrities. Iran's president will challenge a decision to disqualify his top 8 from a vote to elect his successor, but former President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani has no objections to his ban. But President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says that the Guardian Council's removal of Isfandiar Rahim Mashey from the final candidate list is an act of oppression, and he will take the case to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. Ahmadinejad, who is prevented from running in the June 14 ballot owing to term limits, said that Mashey would be beneficial for the country, and he was hopeful that the matter would be resolved. In other world news, rescue workers near the end of the search for survivors in the Oklahoma City suburb where a rare and powerful tornado claimed 24 lives, injured at least 230, and left dozens missing. Police said 101 people have been pulled from the debris alive. After nearly 24 hours of searching, police said they were confident there were no more bodies or survivors in the rubble. The Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office said on Tuesday that 9 children were among those confirmed dead. U.S. President Barack Obama had promised earlier to make available all necessary government resources to Oklahoma to help in the rescue and recovery effort. The U.S. President called the devastation as one of the most destructive tornadoes in history, even though he said the extent of the damage was still unknown.
We had hundreds of first responders that showed up, and as soon as they showed up here, we started giving them assignments and sending them out. They started searching for people immediately, like the school specifically. We went over there because it was such a confined area and such devastation. It was very meticulous. We had to be careful as we stood on debris that we weren't standing on people that were buried underneath. And as you can imagine, just absolutely gut-wrenching, trying to deal with the families and communicate with them and tell them. We moved them to a location and tried to feed them information as we were getting it in. Unfortunately, there was people that lost their lives, little children that lost their lives, and there's no way that we can understand that. There's no way that we can communicate to the families, to the community, how our heart is breaking with them during this time.
For news around the world in brief, South African anti-apartheid campaigner Desmond Tutu received the 2013 Templeton Prize, worth $1.7 million for helping inspire people around the world by promoting forgiveness and justice. A leading human rights activist of the late 20th century, the former Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town played a pivotal role in the downfall of apartheid and subsequently worked to heal wounds in South Africa's traumatized society. Tutu, who is 81 years old, won the Nobel Prize in 1984 for standing up against white minority rule. He remains a prominent campaigner for peace and human rights. Around 200 people hurled rocks at police and set cars ablaze in the Stockholm suburb during the second day of rioting in Sweden, which was triggered by the fatal police shooting of a man wielding a knife. Dozens of windows were smashed, 10 cars and several containers were set on fire, and 7 police officers were injured. The unrest began Sunday night in response to the May 13 shooting in which police killed a 69-year-old man who had locked himself up in an apartment in Husby, west of Stockholm. And Pope Francis has criticized what he called savage capitalism during a visit to see the work of the Missionaries of Charity in the Vatican. In an address to the women of the order founded by Mother Teresa, the Pope called for the values of generosity and charity to be revived. The first non-European pontiff in centuries, the Argentine-born Pope, last week called for financial reform, condemning a dictatorship of the economy and a cult of money. He has set a simpler style for the papacy since taking office in March, shunning traditional ornate garments and living in a guest house instead of an apostolic palace. Microsoft gave the world the first look at its new game console, hoping the newly named Xbox One will build on a solid core of gamer fans and become a hub for living room entertainment. The new device interacts with the user's television, responds to voice and gesture commands, and includes Skype video calling. The console will have 8 gigabytes of memory with an updated controller and new generation Kinect sensor that communicates a user's voice and gesture commands to the console. The third-generation Microsoft console, coming 8 years after the Xbox 360, was unveiled by Games Unit Chief Don Matrick at an event at the software company's campus near Seattle. Matrick said the Xbox One is an ultimate all-in-one entertainment system. Steven Spielberg made a taped appearance at the event, announcing his involvement in a live-action TV series based on the Halo game franchise, which will air exclusively on Xbox.
Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Nancy. And congratulations to the entire team on the tremendous work going into the future of Xbox. I wish I could be there with you today in person, but like all of you here today, I've been playing games for decades. And I even started playing Pong in 1974. And over the years, that experience has exploded from the simple pixels of Pong to worlds that are as immersive as, and certainly more physically interactive, than those portrayed on the silver screen. And those stories have gotten more compelling as the technology has certainly improved. And so for me, the Halo universe is an amazing opportunity to be at that intersection where technology and myth-making meet to produce something really groundbreaking. And I'm incredibly excited about the great journey we're all on, the heroes, worlds, and wonders that Halo will take us on. Thank you.
Hundreds of sunbathers fled a popular Indonesian beach in panic when a 4-meter crocodile laid down next to them to soak up some sun rays. Crowds were thronging the beach at Balikpapan on Borneo Island at the weekend when the 500-kilogram reptile crawled ashore. Beachgoers initially panicked and fled the area before slowly moving back in small groups to watch police attempt to catch the crocodile. It was no easy task as the reptile took to the waters when officers approached and did not come back. The saltwater crocodile was sent to a nearby breeding center where the reptiles are raised for their skin and meat. But Indonesia is home to a vast array of exotic wildlife, including several species of crocodile, and the reptiles occasionally attack humans. In January last year, a 10-year-old girl was swallowed by a crocodile as she played in a river with her father in East Nusa Tenggara province. Something less to worry about on our beaches here. And on that note, I'm going to remind you of our headlines. Gunfire erupts in Tripoli a day after fierce battles rocked the city, killing at least 12 people. Syria's opposition urged fighters across the country to rush to the rescue of rebel stronghold Qusayr. And Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi appeals to the opposition for unity. Those are your headlines this Wednesday, live on Future Television. Join Linda Tamim tomorrow at the same time for what's making headlines here and around the world. Have a good one.
هودي مسيحيين تنك
بدنا القانون، بدنا القانون، بدنا القانون.
بالاخر التنك بتكبيك.
الكويت عم تتعرض لحرب كتير كبيرة، اساسا حرب بالشام بالضاحية الجنوبية، عون وجماعته